On the edge of a small town stood a weathered old farmhouse surrounded by tall oak trees. Inside lived Margaret, a fragile widow in her late 70s. She had lived in that house for over 50 years with her late husband, raising children, planting gardens, and filling the rooms with memories. But to the powerful developers in town, Margaret's home was nothing but an obstacle. They had plans for a new luxury community, complete with shops, swimming pools, and golf courses. And her little house was right in the middle of it. One morning, Margaret received a letter. "You have 30 days to vacate the property." Her hands trembled as she read it. The developers claimed she had no legal right to stay, that the land was rezoned and she was just squatting. Neighbors shook their heads, whispering, "Poor old lady, she won't stand a chance." But Margaret was not as helpless as they thought. She went up to her attic, searching through old boxes. Dust floated in the sunlight as she pulled out a bundle of yellowed papers tied with a ribbon. These weren't just papers. They were land deeds signed by her grandfather, dating back nearly 100 years. The developers had overlooked something crucial. The land didn't just belong to Margaret's husband. It was hers by inheritance, passed through her bloodline. When the day of the eviction came, shiny black cars lined the street. Lawyers in suits stepped out, smirking. One of them whispered, "She'll be out in an hour." The sheriff knocked on her door. "Ma'am, I'm afraid you'll have to leave." Margaret stepped outside, frail but firm, holding her cane in one hand and the dusty documents in the other. "Not today," she said calmly, "because this land is mine." Gasps spread through the crowd as her lawyer, a young woman named Rachel, whom Margaret had quietly hired, stepped forward. She held up the original deeds, complete with seals, signatures, and proof of taxes paid for decades. The developers laughed, dismissing it as worthless, but Rachel smiled. "Then let's take it to court." The courtroom was packed a week later. The developers' lawyers argued aggressively, waiving contracts and citing rezoning laws. But Rachel calmly placed the old deeds on the judge's bench. The judge adjusted his glasses, reading carefully. Then his expression hardened. "These documents are authentic and binding. This property belongs to Mrs. Margaret Hill." The developers went pale. Murmurs filled the courtroom. The judge continued. "Not only that, but any construction done without her consent is illegal trespassing. This court orders all development halted immediately." For once, the developers were speechless. Their million-dollar project had just crumbled, all because of the widow they tried to push aside. As the gavel struck, the courtroom erupted in applause. Margaret clutched her cane, tears welling in her eyes. For the first time since losing her husband, she felt strong again. Outside, reporters gathered. One asked, "Mrs. Hill, how did you find the courage to fight back?" Margaret smiled gently. "Because this house isn't just walls and wood. It's my life, my family, my history. You don't walk away from that." And from that day on, Margaret's little farmhouse stood untouched, a reminder that even the most powerful can fall when they underestimate the strength of a determined heart.